Welcome to lesson 6. In this lesson, we're going to develop an enrollment plugin. We're going to look at grouping, groups and cohorts, and users, roles and enrollments. We will obviously touch on the Enrolment API, but we'll also look at the and use the data manipulation API. And then to round off the lesson, we'll have a look at course and activity completions. Moodle provides several ways to group users. So a group or grouping can be used on two levels. Now groupings are groups of groups. So groupings is a container for a group of groups. Okay, so these the group or groupings can be used on two levels. At course level, which means that all the activities that support group functionality will have that enabled. For all the activities will have that enabled. Okay, and then at activity level, that is the grouping functionality is only activated for that particular activity, or it could be separate from the course level groups defined. Okay, there are three kind of group modes. There's no groups, so there's everybody is part of one big community in the course. Then you have separate groups where each group can only see their own group. They won't even know the others exist. And then you have the visible groups, which are groups that can see other groups but only work in their own group, and the other group's work is read only. Cohorts, on the other hand, are much wider than course. So cohorts are either site-wide or course category-wide. And the purpose really of cohorts is to enable the members of the cohorts to be easily enrolled in courses, and you can maintain the cohort, which will automatically maintain the enrollments of the courses that cohort can use. And there's the enrollment, there's the enrollment sync enrollment plugin or method that will allow that will sync cohort membership with course enrollments, or alternatively a cohort can be manually enrolled in a course. So there's a couple of links for you to follow if you want to understand that even better. The links are to the 3.9 documentation rather than the 3.11 documentation. So if you replace 3.9 with 3.11, you'll get to the latest documentation. So let's look at this this functionality of groups and cohorts in action. So I'll log in as an admin user. If I go to Site Administrator, Users and Cohorts, we have the site-wide. This is a site-wide cohort. So all the users in this cohort, this cohort itself will be available to all the courses in the site. And then you do have an option to only create a cohort for a particular course category. So miscellaneous, any courses in miscellaneous, this cohort that we'll create here will be available to those courses for enrollment purposes. That cohort will not be available to other course categories. Having sorted out cohorts, if we go back and I'll leave that page and we'll go to our test course and click on participants. These are the people who are currently enrolled on the course. Now they are all manual enrollments, and manual enrollments is as simple as click on enroll user, so find a user and set a role. There's some kind of limitations that you can apply to the actual enrollment, but you'll notice the select cohorts. If there's no cohorts in your system, you don't get this, and then you can manually enroll cohorts in the course. Okay, but on top of that, if we look at enrollments, our enrollment methods available to us, we have manual enrollments is by default always enabled in courses. You have the option of two other ones that are automatically added to each course, but they are hidden. Guest access, only if your site allows guest access to your Moodle instance. And then self-enrollment for a student, which you can switch on, and then students can self-enroll themselves on the course. There are other options here. There's self-enrollment, which would be for a different type of role, and cohort sync, which would allow you to again use your create your enrollments via cohorts. Okay, so what are we going to do? We are going to develop an enrollment plugin to join these other ones in our courses. So I'm going to log off. But before we get started with our plugin, let's have a look at the enrollments and enrollment API. So enrolled users are users who fully participate in a course. It's really important to remember that roles and enrollments are separate. Though an enrolled user will have a role within the context of that course, it is possible to have access to a course and not be enrolled, and therefore not really participate in the course. Okay. The Enrolment API defines both the enroll_plugin abstract class that all enrollment plugins have to extend, and provides some general enrollment functions. It's defined in the enroll_lib.php file in the lib directory. And there's a link there for you to go and have a look at the Moodle documentation if you want to. Right, so we look at some plugin specific functions. Enroll get plugins gets all the plugins. Optionally, you can ask for only the enabled ones. The enroll get plugin returns an instance of that plugin's class. Okay, so this gets the instance of the plugin's class. The enroll get instances returns instances of an enrollment in a particular course. So for some enrollment plugins, it's actually possible to add multiple instances. Like we looked at the self-enrollment. There's self-enrollment for student, and then you can have another self-enrollment that would allow somebody to enroll as, let's say, editing teacher, etc. So each of these instances will have different settings. Okay. And then if you just want to check if a particular plugin, enrollment plugin is enabled, you can call that function enroll is enabled. User specific functionality. So enroll get my courses. So this will get all the courses that the user is actually enrolled in. The enroll get users courses, which lists courses a particular user is enrolled in. Is enrolled checks if the user is enrolled, and then you have things like get enrolled users, count enrolled users, enroll get course users, and then you have some SQL snippets to help when you are trying to work with enrollments, things like get enrolled with capabilities, join, etc., etc. So that's it in a kind of nutshell. So let's go and let's get started with our enrollment plugin. So we are going to develop an enrollment plugin called Catalog, and this plugin will allow a user to browse all the courses that have it enabled and enroll themselves as a student on any course that takes their fancy. Okay, so enrollment plugins live in the enroll folder, and we're going to create our folder, and it is catalog. Notice the English spelling, and we'll do our language file, language directory at the same time. Okay, our first file, as usual, version PHP. So where we go with the usual stuff at the top, and our three properties defined, our version, etc., and our component name, our Frankenstein name, enroll_catalog. So let's create our language file as well. Here's our file with this required plugin name string defined. Enrollment plugins are not exceptions to the rule. We need to define a lib.php file. And this is the bare bones of our lib file, the usual stuff at the top, and we are extending enroll_plugin, and our plugin needs to be our Frankenstyle name _plugin, and that's the name you need. That's the format for the name for your enrollment plugin. And now with only these 3 files we can actually install our plugin. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll log in and let's install our plugin. Now with enrollment plugins, you need to enable the plugin to be available in the site. So go in there, go to plugins, go to enrollment plugins, down here, manage enroll plugins, and let's find our catalog enrollment and actually enable it so we have it available within the site. However, even with that, if we go and look at our course, it will not be available to us. So if we go participants, we'll go this route and look at our enrollment methods. If you look down here, it's not available. We've got to add some more functionality. So let's go and do that now. So back in our code, let's add some functionality. So coming back in here, we've added some functions into our class. We've got use standard editing UI and return true. Now I'll just move this aside so we can see the whole statement. Since Moodle 3.1, this function is now the recommended way for Enroll plugins to define the add edit interfaces. So you need that so that you use the standard user interface for your add and edit of your enrollment. Okay, and then we have can add instance, and the course ID gets passed in. We get the context of the course here, and then we check if the if our enrollment plugin is enabled, and if not, we return false. So you can't add an instance if our plugin is not enabled. I don't think you'd actually get the core, but it's to be on the safe side, you don't want to add instances of enrollments that are disabled. Okay, and then we check for a capability of Moodle course enroll config, and if that capability, that user does not have that capability, we return false, so they can't add an instance of the enrollment into the course. Otherwise we return true. Now with this function we can actually go back and add our enrollment plugin to a course. So let's go and do that now. So going to log in, and let's attempt to add the enrollment plugin to our banner course. Okay, so we can go this way, which is a different way to get to your enrollment methods, and we've got our catalog enrollment, but we have an issue. We've got a permission issue. Sorry, but you do not have currently permissions to do catalog config. We need to define a capability to allow the enrollment plugin to be added to the course. So let's try and do that. So back in our code, we need to define capabilities in our db access PHP file. So we create a folder, db, and we create a new PHP file called access.php. We've seen an access.php file before, so I'm not really going to go through the actual properties of each of the capabilities we are defining here. So we've defined a catalog config for a capability, a catalog manage. So this manages the enrollments of users. So that's to add and remove instances. This is to actually manage the actual enrollments, and this is to allow the unenroll of users, including self. Actually, you can unenroll yourself if you happen to be enrolled. Okay, so those are the capabilities, and all of them are by default for the manager and editing teacher. We need to define some language strings, so let's do that now. Here are the strings for our capabilities. We've defined them now. So let's upgrade our version PHP so we can upgrade and take in the new capabilities and the strings. And let's go back to our Moodle and upgrade and see what happens then. So we log in again. We need to upgrade. So we upgrade. Okay, let's go back to our banner topics course. And we'll go the other way to our enrollment methods and see if we can add our catalog enrollment. So it looks like it's working, but we still have a bit of an error, and it's probably small for you on the screen in the video, but it's we are missing edit instance validation function in our plugin. It says the plugin has no validation. So let's see what we have to do. Well, to fix that error we just seen, a quick way to do it would be to define the instance validation, the edit instance validation method, and just return an empty array. But we're going to do something else in a little while. There is another error on the page, and this is the enrollment plugin catalog should override the function can hide show instance. So we've got two things we really need to fix. Another thing that we kind of think about is that there's no settings for our catalog enrollment. So when we added it, there was no way to add any kind of settings, and just to add practice, we're going to allow the user to change the name of the enrollment plugin in this course. Okay, so let's go back to our code. Going to log out again. So let's go to our libphp and add some functionality there. So I've added in two functions. There's our edit instance validation function that caused the error. I'm not sure whether you should be checking for edit instance validation if the plugin has not actually defined a form, but that's how it works at the moment. So that might be a little bit of a bug. But we've defined a form, some elements to go on the form, on the instance form, and this basically is getting a name for our plugin in that particular course. So we've added an element text with the name, with the call name. We will define a string for that. With the sizes, the name attributes is the attributes, the HTML attributes for the field itself, and then the edit instance validation is what comes back after the form is submitted, and we check that check our input. So our data name, which is our field name, our element, we check that it's not much longer than 255 characters. We have put that in, but that's an example of how you would check your form, validate your form in an enrollment plugin. Okay, right. There was another error, if you remember, so let's fix that as well. And here we have it. We are defining the can hide show instance function. We're getting the course ID, the context of the course, checking if the user has the capability to config. So that's our capability in this context. If they haven't got it, we return false, otherwise we return true. Right, and since we've created our capability and we are checking for that capability, we can also add it into our can add instance function. So we come down here and then we add in a check for our enroll catalog config as well when determining whether an instance can be added in the course. Back in Moodle, we go and see if we've got rid of our errors. Banner topics course, we go and look at our, let's go this route to annual enrollments, and you notice the error is not there, and if we edit, we now have a chance to call that, let's give it the American spelling, and now we have a way to rename our enrollment method in the course. So now we need to find a way to actually allow users to browse the courses and actually decide to enroll. So we're going to create an index.php file. That's where we're going to show our catalog. So let's go do that. So before we dive into our index.php file, I thought this would be a good time to actually discuss the data manipulation API, since we'll be using it in our index.php file. So this API defines the standard methods to access database tables. Okay. It is accessed via the global DB object, which is an instance of the Moodle underscore database class, and is initialized very early in the process from settings in the config.php file. So apart from the usual querying, updating, etc. Of records in database tables, the API provides a number of compatibility public methods. Now these are methods that allow the SQL to be created in the right format for the several types of database engines that Moodle supports. So for example, here are some example methods, and there's a link here in this page where you can click on and actually go and have a look at all the functions that are defined. Alternatively, you can look in the code, but there's a number. So example is the get in or equal, so that gives you the right SQL fragment for an in or equals snippet. The concat, so you can get the right format for that. So things like is empty, is not empty, like, and substring. So these will create snippets of SQL that will work for the database engine in use of the Moodle instance in which your plugin is installed. Okay. So handling query results, where the method is expecting to return only a single record, you can actually control how you get the results. So the number of constants that have been defined. If you pass ignore underscore missing, which tends to be the default, as the strictness parameter to the actual method call, then you'll get a false if the record is not found, and it will generate a debugging message if you got debugging on if multiple records are found, and this is the default behavior, like I said. Passing must exist. The must underscore exist constant will make the call throw an exception if the record is not found. There is another constant, the ignore underscore multiple, which will only return the first of multiple records, but that's not recommended, and it may be deprecated in the future. Right, for SQL parameters, now all the data manipulation methods expect a placeholder parameter. normally just standardly called params, which is an array of values that are used to fill placeholders in your SQL statements. So PHP programmers that you are, you know that this is a safer way of doing SQL. It ensures your code is secure. So there are two types of placeholders. We've got your SQL underscore params underscore QM question mark, which replaces question mark whole placeholders in your SQL. And it's single dimensional, must contain the same number of items as the placeholders in the SQL, and replacement is sequential. Then the other one is the SQL underscore params underscore named version of it, which is a multi-dimensional array with the keys matching the placeholders in the SQL. And the placeholders are the key, the placeholders in the SQL are the key names with a colon prefix. So there are several ways to specify conditions for SQL queries. The simplest form, and the one that's used the most, is you pass in a conditions array where the field name is the key and the value is the field's value. And the array items are joined with an AND statement. So all conditions have to be met to generate a result. The other option is to pass in a string containing the where conditions, and those functions are normally name of function underscore select, and we'll see an example of that in a bit. And then you can pass through a full SQL command as well, and then the functions will normally be appended with the underscore SQL as its method name. So the methods. Getting single record, get underscore record, that's the one that you pass in the conditions as an array. The get record underscore select is where you pass in the select string, or get record under SQL where you return, where you pass in the full SQL command. Okay. And you can see the pattern here. So your underscore select for select statements, underscore SQL for your SQL statements. Okay, and then so multiple records is your get records. Getting data as key value pairs in an associative array is your get records menu, etc. Counting records that match the given criteria, so count records, and then again count records underscore select, etc. And then quickly checking if a given record exists, etc. Okay, so getting a particular field value from one record is just get field with its variations. Getting field values from multiple records, field set, get field set. Setting a field value, so you can set a field value, and you can delete records, only two methods there, and insert records, again two methods there, and our update record. And these last three would expect a standard class object to be passed in, which relates to the particular record or records you want to deal with. So where there's a large number of records to be returned, it's best to use the record set methods, which mean that the records are not returned and kept in memory, and there's the list of the relevant methods to call if you want to work with record sets. Okay, so a list of all these query and manipulation methods and the expected parameters is in a handout in this lesson. So transactions. You can you start a transaction, start underscore delegated transaction, and it starts the transaction, returns a transaction object. Delegated transactions can be nested. The outermost transaction only committed if all the nested ones are committed successfully. Any rollback in nested transactions will roll back all the transactions. And then you allow commit to allow your commit to happen, or roll back if you expect to roll back the transaction. And there we have a link worth having a read through. And again, a reminder that there's a handout for the manipulation functions or methods in this lesson. So back in our code, let's create our index.php file. New PHP file. So this is our file, usual stuff at the top. And then because we are web facing, browser facing, we require the config PHP file. We ensure the user is authenticated. I'll put in the globals there to stop the ID complaining about these variables. We set the error message to an empty string, and then we check for an optional parameter of action, which has the value enroll me. Now I'm going to miss this bit. This is what happens when the user is attempting to enroll. So this bit will be how we deal with the enrollment. But I'm going to jump this bit for now, and then we go into setting up our page. So the usual stuff to set up the page. We generate our header. If we happen to have an error message, which would happen if the user tried to enroll and there was a problem, we would be able to output the error here. Then we use the Enrolment API to get all the enrollment plugins. The true parameter there is we only want enabled plugins to be returned. So we get our enabled plugins, and we check if our plugin is in that array. So if it's not in there, that means the plugin is not enabled, and then we'll give them an error message for that. Okay. Then going in, we then try and get, now there's no way to do this through the API because I want all the instances in all the courses to be returned. So I've gone straight to the database to get the records. So there's our DB manipulation happening there. We getting it from the enroll table. Remember, there's no prefix when you mention table names, only the real name of the table. Then I'm looking for enroll equals catalog and status equals enroll instance enabled, which is one of the constants defined in the Enrolment API. And all I'm asking for is the course ID to be returned. So if we don't get any instances, then we know we've got no courses in category. We'll need to define a string for that. If they are, we then set up the enrollment URL for later on in the code. So we take the page URL, which is this file index.php. We add in an action parameter with the name enroll, with the value enroll me. Okay. So then we get all the current user's courses. So all the courses that user is enrolled on into there, and then we start ourselves a table, an HTML table. So we're using the HTML class, HTML underscore table class, which is defined within the output and page APIs. Yeah. So we start that, and then for each instance, that's each instance of our enrollment plugin, instance of our enrollment plugin in each course, we go through that, and if we don't find it within the enrollments, the user's enrollments, we know that user is not enrolled on that course, so we then get to try and display the course details. So we get the course, and that's a shortcut method of the DB manipulation API to get course. And then if the course is visible, we have to make sure that the course is visible. We then create a table row giving the user the information. I'm just going to move that a little bit, move this back here put that there. So what we're doing, we we add the course ID onto our enroll URL. We then create an enroll button by calling new single button. We've seen this again. We've discussed this again when we were talking about output in a previous lesson. We give it the enroll URL, which would be now the action and the course ID parameters with it, and we give it a string, obviously, a string for the button, and then we generate the table row. So the rows sit in the table's data property, and it's an array, obviously, and then we create a table row with an array of table cells, and in the last table cell we output the enroll button. So here we are actually rendering the HTML for the enroll button. Okay, coming out of that, if the only way we're now telling that there's any data is by counting how many rows we've got. If we don't have any rows, then we can assume there's no rows, no courses that person can enroll on. So we'll give them a message that there's no courses in the catalog. Otherwise, we would then put a header and then write out the table using HTML writer table method, and then that will generate the table. Okay, and then these are the catches for when we had plugin is disabled, no plugin, and then we output the footer. So after the user clicks on the enroll button, they come in at the top of our file, and obviously they'll have the action parameter with the value enroll me. And even though that's optional, once we've seen the enroll me parameter, we then make it a required parameter for the course ID. So course ID has to be specified if action parameter is specified, and then we get our course context based on the course ID. Okay, and note the use of must exist. This will throw an exception if the course does not exist. Okay, then we try and find a student role ID. Now there's been discussions about how's the best way to get student role IDs, because in theory you could have several types of student role IDs in your system, but for now this seems to be the kind of, well, the easiest way to do it. So all we're doing is getting all the roles in the course context, so the course context roles, and then for each of the roles we loop through and check for the archetype student and use the first one we come across as our student role ID. Now, well, if we have a student role ID, we do some work. If not, we're going to throw an error. It would be unusual for there not to be a student role ID. Okay, so what we do now is we get the enroll instances in that course. So this enroll get instances is looking for all the instances of the enrollment plugin in that course ID, and the true parameter again for only enabled plugins. So, and then for each of those we look for our enroll catalog in the list that comes back. Okay, once we've got that, we break out of the loop and our instance now will be set to catalog. Right, so now we get hold of an instance of our class. So we get role get plugin catalog. This will load the class, the enrollment plugin itself, and then we use that, the enrollment plugin's enroll user method, because that might be different for different plugins. Some plugins do extra stuff, but we haven't defined enroll user in our class, but then it's coming from the parent class. So we're using the standard enroll user. We give them the instance of our enrollment plugin in that course, the user's ID, and we set them as a student by passing in the student role ID. Okay, now for some reason enroll user doesn't return any results, and it doesn't return anything. So we need to check whether actually whether the enroll user has been successful. Very likely it is, but it's worth checking. So we check if the user is enrolled in our course context, and if they are, we then create a link for them to go and view the course. So they go to view and the course ID, and then we redirect them to the course. Yep. If they're not enrolled, we get a failed enroll message, and then this is if there's no student role, so that's the else, and then we come back to the setting of this. So redirect will exit, and if that's the only point you will exit out of it, otherwise you are setting error messages that are then output further down in the page. Okay, so that's the index PHP file, and we need to define some language strings for this, and then we can test it out. So let's go and look at our strings file, and this is it here. We've defined all the strings that we need for our index PHP, catalog header, plugin disabled, enroll on this course to invite, cannot enroll as student, etc., etc. So there's our strings. So what I'm going to do now is up the version of our plugin, and we'll go back to Moodle. So let's do that and save. So let's go to Moodle. So back in Moodle, log in. We've got upgrade that. Right, so now we need to find a way to get our users to find the catalog. Now there's several ways that could be done, but I've decided I'm going to do it via a custom menu option. So I'm going to go to appearance. Okay, then I'm going to go to theme settings. I'm going to go down here to custom menu items. So in here I will add an option. So we got a course catalog, and it points to our plugin at enroll catalog index PHP. Now you can look down here for examples of how this is used. There's no default, unlike the user menu items. We've touched on this in our tour, but anyway, so we'll save that there, which gives us the catalog on the navigation. So if I click on that, let's make sure we haven't lost it. We haven't lost it. It's definitely going to the right page. So now users can get to the catalog. Now before I log out and log in as a student to enroll on a course, I am going to enroll our teacher in our banner topics course. So I'll go there, participants, enroll users. So I'm manually enrolling our teacher as a teacher in our course. So we have a teacher enrolled in this course. So let's log out and log in as one of our test users. So let's log in as one of our test users. And then click on the link. So this is my banner topics course. I'm not enrolled on it. So if I click on that, I'm now enrolled in the course. So I am a member of this course. Okay. So let's log out and log in as teacher and see what that looks like. So let's log in as the teacher. Okay. And let's go to that banner topics course. And let's look at what we can do with our students' enrollment. Now, first of all, you'll notice if I click that, our enrollment method is not manual, it's catalog. Okay, but you'll notice there's no manage or delete buttons along there here. Okay, and can we change this user's enrollment? So if I make this user whatever I got as an option. Non-editing teacher. Can I remove the student and try and save that? No. The student stays. The non-editing teacher role has been assigned, but the student stays. So we still got some work to do to manage the actual enrollments themselves. I'm going to take off the non-editing teacher role for now, so we leave things in a good state. Let's go back to our code. So now we go back to lib and add some functionality into this file. So we added in a function called roles protected, and it returns false. This will allow the teacher to actually remove the student role from the enrollment that has been made by the catalog. Okay, so additionally, we need some more functionality. So we've added another function, an allow unenrolled instance, and we return true. That will allow the manager or the teacher to unenroll actual users. And then we'll need one more function, I think, and the additional function is to allow manage. Notice these ones get instance passed in, but all we're doing is returning true for these functions. So now if we log in back as a teacher, we should be able to manage the actual enrollment that our catalog user has. So back in Moodle, let's go back in as teacher. Shouldn't have bothered logging out the last time, but anyway, we go in there. We look at our participants. So let's start with actually trying to change the role of the user. So we've got non-editing user. Let's take off student and save, and you can see it's changed it. So let's put that back as student, take away the none and save that. So we can change the role of the user. We've now got the two icons on the side there, which means I can unenroll this user if I wanted to, or if I didn't want to, I could edit the actual enrollment. So I could start the enrollment or end the enrollment, etc., or actually suspend the user's enrollment. So that gives us our enrollment plugin. And since we have a little bit of time left in this lesson, I thought I'll touch on something that will prepare us for our next lesson, and that is activity completions. So let's go and have a look at this in Moodle. So I'll go back to site home. I'm going to go to our test course, and in our first our section 1, so this one here is section 0 at the top of the announcements forum. In our first section, we have 2 assignments set out there, and then these are other resources. So if I turn editing on, right, we can look at one of the assignments. So I'll edit the settings of this assignment, and we'll go through this. Now, a lot of the activity modules, remember when we speak about modules, we are talking about both activities and resources. Resources are ones that are static, kind of links, files, etc. Activities is where the user is expected to, or the student is expected to participate in using. So the student is expected to interact with the activity. Okay, and they will have some common settings, and the settings page will have some common settings that are common to all modules, or common to all activities if you're editing an activity, or all modules if all resources if you are editing a resource module. Now, on top of that, if your plugin supports sub-plugins, then in the same screen, in the same settings, you will have the opportunity to collect information or settings for your sub plugins. So in this case, with the assignment, this is an assignment module, activity module. Right, you've got things like availability, which will be standard across. I think it's across activities rather than resources, etc. And then we have down here two kind of setting areas. Right, now these are the actual sub plugins settings. So we have submission types, like I mentioned before. So these are the type of submissions the user can use to submit their work. So online text or file submissions, and this can be extended by plugins. And then the feedback types, which is the tutor giving feedback to the student about the work that they've done. And then down here we've got some extra settings for submission. I'm not quite sure whether these are specific to assignment, the assignment activity, but you have those. And then you'll have things like notifications, which is standard across the board. Okay, so what's the real kind of purpose with submissions and feedbacks is that eventually, in most cases, you are working towards getting some kind of grade for the assignment, for the activity. Okay, and why is grade important? Because grade then feeds into whether you can be regarded as having completed the activity, and whether having done all the activities in a course, whether you've completed that course. So if we look along here, we don't have a way to set the completion of this activity, and there's a reason for that. So we'll stop here at the grade, and then I'll come out of this. Okay, so we'll go back to the course, and then if I go and edit the course settings, and I come down the page, down here we have a section about completion tracking. Now, if this is off at the course level, then none of the activities in the course can enable completion tracking. So you have to enable it first for the course, okay? And you can show the activity completion conditions, which I'll show you in a moment. And if I save this now and we go back to our assignment, which was assignment 2, and edit the settings, when we go down the page, we now have an opportunity to set an activity completion. So the whoever's setting up the activity will decide whether not to do any completion for that, or you can set it so that the students can manually mark the activity as completed. So in the case of, let's say you've put up a resource like a video, you're not really going to be able to tell when they've actually finished watching the video, so they mark themselves as having completed by watching the video and then marking themselves as having watched the video. And then you can actually set some conditions. So these conditions are set here in these settings. So one of the conditions, all you need is for the student to view the activity, and then they'll be regarded as having completed it. Or the user needs to get a grade, to get to be regarded as having completed the activity, or the student must submit some kind of submission for the activity to be completed. And I think this comes from the fact that you have submissions in this activity. Okay, and then you can also set it by date. So in this case, you might say, okay, student must receive a grade, or student must submit to have this activity completed, and this will be an and, so they'll have to submit and receive a grade. And then you can set the actual grade setting there, simple grading, etc. I'm not going to go through the grading stuff because that's a different ball game altogether. So we mark that as as requiring completion, so this activity completion. So if I save and return to course, okay, you must make a submission to receive a grade and what have you. Okay, and then if I go back to my settings for the course, I have a new section there called course completion, and here is where I then set the conditions for the course to be completed. Okay, so that was for the activity, and because we have the activity set as having requiring completion, it then appears in this list. So you got note, activity completion must be set for an activity to appear in the above list. So you'd have all your assignments, and you tick off all the assignments that you'd require the student to complete for them to be considered having completed the course. Now you can mix and match all conditions, because here you can have all the conditions met. So whatever conditions you choose amongst these, all of them would have to be met before the course is regarded as being completed, or any of the conditions are met, so you'll have an or one or the other. So you could easily have that assignment needs to be completed, and you could maybe have a course grade. So the grade needs to be 80% as such, and then you save that, and that will be what would be required for the user to be regarded as having completed. So generally, you complete your tasks and activities in your course, and then those are marked as completed, and then the course is marked as completed, and then all these completions feed into the learner competencies, completion of parts of curricula, etc. And then it also feeds into the learner engagement and encouragement. So you can enhance them by issuing badges for having completed a course or an activity, or issuing certificates, etc. But the whole thing is all about getting the learner to where they need to be. And I think we'll leave it at that. Let's go and review what we've done in this lesson. And that's it for lesson 6. We developed an enrollment plugin. We touched on grouping, groups and cohorts. We looked at users, roles and enrollments. We obviously looked at the Enrolment API. We also used the data manipulation API. And to round off the lesson, we looked at course and activity completions.